we go. And vertical. So, good evening, everyone. You dumb dogs scratching his feet up there. We're going to start out sharpening a couple tools. First off, good place to start. That's two bowl gouges, both of which are actually 60 degrees. Wet back grind on the bowl gouge as well. Use that one at least to start with. And we probably will need the 1/2 inch spindle gouge as well. Quick little simple change of the arm and we're good to go. There's lines on the side of it to know where I'm at. If there was a little spot I missed, we'll find out. So the project tonight is a hybrid blank that we're going to turn into probably a vase looking kind of a thing. At least that's the plan. Really don't need to be on the screen that I'm on over here though. Back over here. Make sure we're there. Yep, we're good. This is something I don't do a lot of these, primarily because I don't necessarily like playing with the epoxy stuff, but do it every once in a while just for the. I have a couple of these actually made up that sitting around collecting dust, so you might not be able to get it to go very fast. I'm gonna live with a little vibration. I'm gonna start down here at this end. There's a big chunk sticking out right here. Just a little itty bitty bite. So we can get that part away. The fingers not feeling there. Trying to get rid of the sharp corners, far corners, rather. And of course, we're going to have wood down there. You can see what happens with the epoxy stuff. It's sort of chipping it away now. How are we doing tonight? This should have a this should have a considerable amount of wood in it if I remember correctly, but we got rid of some of the imbalance, so maybe we can go speed it up a little bit. A little bit more efficient cutting. Okay, now, way too much of this rinse and repeat on some of this stuff. That whole big lump there is going to eventually go away. A whole different animal than the wood. I think my tool rest is actually set a little on the low side for that for some reason. At least it felt like it. Yes, it was. I say it wasn't reacting the way it should have. It also feels like that actually knocked the edge over that one really quickly. But we're still nowhere near round. Still chipping away. Lots of wood though. A lot more wood in there than I thought there was. This is kind of the rather boring part. Well, at least we're getting closer. Actually, a lot more. I mean, that's a void in there. This is going to be a little vase, so that void there might actually go away. It's also knocking the edge off of the tool pretty quickly because of the epoxy. The sooner I can get through that, the better I'll be. At least the majority of it. Just get a sort of a little rough shape to it. More curious as to how much wood I actually have to it. It's kind of dusty stuff too. I think this might have been the one that's actually a burl, or part of a burl. There's wormholes and everything. This might, the way that's cutting and the amount of dust is coming off, this piece is actually stabilized. I'm pretty sure it's still epoxy and not the urethane resin. Pretty sure. I guess I've already made the executive decision that that's going to be the top. Still not round up there. Let's get it a little closer to round and I'll put a tenon on it. Put it on the chalk before I get too carried away. Still hear a bunch of crap in there that snap crack when I'm popping, so there's still plenty of, yeah, it's not round yet either. Plenty of epoxy that's never overly cooperative. There's also some mug holes going through there. Interesting. Now let's get a, see how much of a struggle it's going to be to put a tenant down here. It doesn't want to overly cooperate now. So rather than going back over the grind, I'll just actually you can hone a parting tool pretty quick and easy, just to get a sort of a fresh edge up on that tip. We can take this down a bit. And we are going to have to turn the dust collector on. And things, stuff is between the stabilized wood and the resin, just creates that cloud of dust. We have a set of calipers set. I don't think we're really even anywhere close. We're getting there. We're getting close enough to switch over to the one that's cut at a. This one's grounded at an angle. Matches the dovetail on the jaw. Doesn't have to be perfect for sure. That will go away at the end. Rid of those razor blade sharp edges out there though. Right over there. Close enough. A little bigger than it needs to be, but that's okay. If it was all wood, I wouldn't worry about getting that tenon on there very quickly like that. Because in a piece of wood, I would just go back and re-true it up. But when you got the combination of the two, you don't necessarily want to do it that way. Like I said, it could have been much smaller. Yeah, we're gonna live with that. By all rights, I probably should just put it back between centers and take that tenon down more than what it is, but we're just gonna go with what we got. I have to stop short down here somewhere. Not that big of a deal. Might be a night of sharpen, sharpen, and sharpen. At least till we get through most of this resin part. Tell me that's not even round down there yet. No, it's a tiny bit there. No, not quite. Um, Yeah, going. Tiny fries. Really would rather stick with the cutting tools as long as I possibly can. Eventually I'm going to have to go over to scrapers, because that's what the resin likes. Generally though, the stabilized wood is not so bad, which is what this wood part would be. So at least we're there. Let's come back the other way. Take it super slow with this stuff. Not something I'm necessarily used to. Make this thing look like a milk bottle or something, I guess. As a part of any of the time you work with any of the resin, they stick to everything. One tiny little flat left. Okay, so drop this down back here a bit. Since we know that's where we're going to, we have a better idea where our shape is going to be. Makes this end way too big. Another dull again was probably about ready to go sharpen them all. Let's see, just going to use the other side. There we go. But I think the other side of this gouge is probably dull. That's where I started with. It is. Before we head to the grinder, like I say, resin likes to be scraped with a sharp scraper. It's nothing more than this is a negative rake scraper. It does have a burr on it. I'm going to remove the burr. It just wants to be a sharp edge. That's why all the people like to use carbides, because the carbide tools are nothing more than a scraper with a relatively sharp edge. So if I take my tool and make it just a sharp edge rather than a burr, it will work. At least that's the plan. Because this will want to throw streams straight up in the air. Back here where it's all resin, or more resin anyhow. That's going to work, but it's a very slow process. Also not getting me quite as clean of a cut as what I would like, so yeah, the spindle gouge is still sharp. I'll try that once. I can't take much of a cut, so I might as well make them all dull before I even go anywhere. Spindle gouge will not let you take a very big cut. We're getting somewhere now, sort of. Also, much more of a finer edge on it. It's also going to mean it's going to dull it probably just as quick, if not quicker. Okay, kind of a half-ass shape so far. Teeny tiny little flat there. Some nice color in the resin. If we ever get it down to where we want it. It's also a crack. That's always an unpleasant thing. All these dark streaks are kind of wormholes they're probably full of poop, and when I stabilized it, they stabilized them, would be my guess. So, back to the grinder. Which helps when you get it tight. Hopefully we can turn for a little less than 2 or 3 minutes. Hopefully. Do work, try to get more of a shape, but unfortunately I just find a crack, which is not what I wanted it to be. So that's going to flow down to somewhere in there. Somewhere down there. I'm not worried about that. I'm more interested in what's going on up here. For the moment, it's too big. World of difference when a tool's sharp. Okay, so that's so we have the rule of thirds. So I was just looking at. I should measure, do a little measure on that rather than just chopping away. So it's still about 6 inches high, a little less than six. So down, somewhere down in that area, but actually somewhere up down in this area here. It's probably going to be about the sort of the fattest point, maybe. Not something I make very often, so can't necessarily say that I'm very good at coming up with that shape. Really almost looks like it should be a little bit further that way. So I've got a little flat spot to get rid of too. Just down in your neck. The neck can be a whole lot narrower than what it is too. I gotta get the top of this taken care of before I make this too much thinner in here. I'll have trouble with thinning. Just still can't get rid of it. Stupid little flat spot. Oh well. Kind of is what it is. So for right now, we're going to get rid of the tailstock. Probably won't like this very well, since it doesn't want to seem like it wants to cut overly well. Make sure things are tight. This time we'll be gentle. We'll switch over to a spindle gouge. We're gonna sort of drop this center down a little ways. In view, I can back this up just a shade. There we go. You see what we're trying to do anyhow. Put it that way. It's not liking that. Not in the least. No support there. Vibrate like crazy. So lighten up on the touch. Lighten the cuts up. It's gonna be a little base, part wood, part resin. Can't be 100% sure. I can tell you what resin it is, but just by the way it cut earlier, when I was trying to get it down to a round, I'd say this is epoxy. I also think the piece of wood was actually stabilized first, at least by the amount of dust that wants to come off of it. And also is liking the part of doing anything scraping wise rather than cutting wise. Another good indication. I also think at this point I should actually, this scrape's nice. So that's, yeah, either that or the epoxy was able, this piece was sort of a little on the punky side anyhow. I think right there is a good place to actually drill. Put a drill bit in, drill the hole. Of course, I guess the next major question is how big and how deep we want to go. I could go up to about a half an inch. It's like I'm not really too concerned that it's super deep. Yeah, that'll work. It's not going to get hot on this, and I'm not going to hollow it out. I'll just make it more of a decorative kind of a vase. Put a couple dried flowers or something like that in it. It's kind of a nightmare to actually hollow one of these out like this because of all the resin. The resin just has a tendency just to dull the tools like right away. At least this epoxy stuff does anyhow, put it that way. Use a brush to clean the dirt off the drill bit so I don't. I love this squeal. There's definitely more resin down low coming off onto the drill bit. And if we put a little beeswax on the drill bit, it would help it. That drill bit's actually warm enough it's melting the beeswax. There should be one more. Yes. I call that deep enough. Loaded with resin down there. Beeswax on the drill bit does work, as you can hear. I'll set this drill bit somewhere to set the tool off. And we'll continue to hollow this out a little bit down into there. I want to sort of get it nice and deeply flared out down low. Down in here. I think it looks nicer that way. Of course, that's just my opinion. Sort of give it a nice curve. Go with it. Trying to figure out where I had a decently shaped hole there. It looks like we're all right. I think that'll be just fine in there. Looking to see whether there was more cracks. I don't see any, but some weird lines. Kind of a weird piece all the way around. So now we go back to our live center and use our cone in there, on there. So it's going to give us support. That's really all we need. Just a little bit of pressure in there, just so I can shape this area up here better without too much issues. I mean, it still looks too big. Better. Always pays a step way back and look. Even could stop it. Would be a good idea as well. Make sure we're not getting anything that's really chewed up. It's a little chewed up on that corner, but move with that a little bit. Back to the bowl gouging, maybe a little bit quicker. And get rid of a little bit more of that so we can see where we're going to. I think we're a little flat. Here. That's alright. A little harder to do with the bowl gouge than the spindle gouge, but it works the same. A little bit of patience. Lots of funkiness to it, that's for sure. I'm not visualizing very well tonight for some reason. Maybe we'll just use a scraper for that part up in there. Ooh, that one's not, it's a flat. And we'll give it a try. Tool rest probably is alright. Because that section right there is almost pure resin in through there, which will definitely, I don't like using it. That's actually a skew. I sharpened that up just for the class, just so somebody could try a square skew, which I don't particularly care for. So I'll just use my little round nose scraper for this area. Almost like watching paint dry on something like this. Should be cutting it clean, nice and clean on the resin. I got to go up here a little bit because I have some of that chipped a little bit right there. I'm almost thinking I should not have left, should not have drilled that hole quite as deep because the shape I have probably really warrants it finishing up more in that area. But I think I've already went too deep at that hole. Maybe not. Right into there. I'm thinking this thing's going to finish out somewhere down in here or down here, rather than the whole bottom, which will be another issue. That means I got to remove all that, which will be much more challenging. The other thing that this stuff material sticks to the tool rest, and the tool doesn't want to slide on it. It keeps. This is all another. This is almost like doing a hollow form. You just get all you get done doing is shutting things off. That's bug holes. It's been stabilized, so they won't fall out. I just have to smooth up. I got a bunch of lumps and bumps in there. I think that's about where it's going to finish up right about there. Probably could be tucked in a little bit further yet. maybe. Okay. That, I should be able to do that with a spindle gouge down in there, easier than the scraper. This should be easier in the aspect of being able to see shape develop better. I want that to round down around that corner. That's more like it. Yeah, that'll work. We're going to say that's where that's going to end up. That's where it's going to end at. Definitely still have a fair amount of ripples in there. I don't really want to sand. So, sharp scraper, aka skew, is going to help me out with that. Anytime I would use my skew for something like that is because it is a resin and epoxy piece. Otherwise, I would be using my skew as it properly should be. So I just saved a whole bunch of sanding. Like a very, very light touch. We're sort of even going in the wrong direction. We should be going downhill. Nice. I think that'll sand out easy enough. We'll see here in one short second because we'll just give it a little bit of a sand and figure out what album we're going to cut that off down there. I know how I would like to cut it off, whether it's going to cooperate to do so. maybe 20, 18. Well, give it a start with dry sandpaper. Generally speaking, I usually do not. I usually do it wet. See whether if this has actually truly been stabilized, which I'm pretty sure it has, will actually sand quicker and easier. See, it's just gonna want to clog the sandpaper. I did bring water over, so just do it the way I would normally do. If I sand with the water, it actually it makes it easier to sand. Actually sands a little bit quicker. So it doesn't clog up the sandpaper. And of course there's no dust, so I could just turn the dust wiper off. I don't know, listen to that. Could sand in both directions, either direction. I get in that habit of sanding in reverse because of the dust collection. Peels it off quite quickly though. Let me sit down there, like a line or something down in there. It didn't want to come out. I think it did now. Also gives you an idea what it's going to look like. This one will actually get lacquered, because if that is epoxy, which I'm pretty sure that this is, will not like the super glue. Ever turn bows dark? Never heard of it. Can't say that I've ever heard of such a thing. Yeah, yeah. Funny you should say that. There was a young lady at the one symposium a couple years ago that was blind, and she was turning. She was a demonstrator. I didn't manage to get to see her, but talked to some people that did, and they said she was amazing. I mean, she's doing everything. Most of the time her left hand was on the piece of spinning wood. She had somebody, like I said, she had somebody actually put the piece of wood on the lathe for her, father, relative, or something, or somebody she trusts, I guess, to make sure that it wasn't going to hit anything. Yeah, nice rounded corners, nothing sharp. There you go. It's just a matter of going through a couple more grits. Oh, okay. Osage orange is an interesting one. It's actually a scrub tree, although I'm seeing some people around my area here. They must have gotten some. I've seen some people actually cutting it up for lumber. It's rather hard. I gotta work hard to get nervous. I'm too old to get too excited about things. Do go through a lot of paper towels though doing this. I gotta keep the slurry from the previous grit cleaned off, or we'll just put the same scratches right back into it. We don't want to do that. So that was 220. We'll go to 320. Keep forgetting this camera's directly in front of me. Bang right into it. Yep. You're talking about the Osage? It does polish very well. The only problem with the Osage, which is right along with a lot of the other ones just like it, that they don't retain their color. They turn to a brownish, golden brown relatively quickly, which is kind of, some ways, is a little bit of a disappointment with them. But it is what it is. I don't pass it up. Same way with black locust. If you ever have any you can get a hold of some of that. They're really almost in the same family. The black locust might actually be even a little bit harder, more dense. It's heavier. That's what I usually will make mallets or something like that out of them. Although I do have some, just got some more of it, little logs. I did some little itty bitty, little 4-inch natural edge bowls with it. I just did them this week. And one of them's ready to be finished. Brought that one over. Those went from a green log, as in last Tuesday, I guess it was, because when our turning meeting was. Relatively green. Wasn't throwing water, but um, turned. They're about a little over a quarter of an inch thick. Sanded them, because you can sand wet wood. Just takes a little bit longer to get the surface dried off. I sanded them inside and out, and then put them in through the microwave. I don't know, maybe a half a dozen times, something like that, until they stop losing moisture, and they're pretty much done, ready to go. Yeah, well, the black locust, a lot of times, well, at least all that I've ever gotten a hold of, it was sort of like working with this for whatever reason. I never really had any issues with stabilized wood, which is what this is. This is actually a piece of cherry. I got all look pretty nice, lacquered up. I would try to do my normal super glue finish on it, but I'm almost positive that's epoxy. What epoxy and super glue are not friends. So that would just cause me a whole lot of aggravation. So it'll just get lacquered once it's dried off. It won't take long to dry either. I'm going to pretty much force it to dry here. See what it's going to look like. Okay, it'll look kind of interesting. As long as we don't make any other boo-boos. We're going to be careful in that one because we do have a hole drilled pretty deep. So we'll go to the bottom of our drill hole with a trusty little scientific pencil. So there's at least 3/8. Um, Cedar has a tendency to crack pretty good. Cedar is also another one that you can be. All woods, all domestic woods have a certain amount of toxins in them, or toxic to us. Some of it depends on your level of withstanding some of that. I guess it'd be the easiest way of putting it. And cedar, I got a handful of logs from my uncle probably about a year or so ago, and I turned some of it right away. It's a red. This is a red cedar. It didn't bother me, but I don't know, about a month or so ago, a lot of it, a lot of what I got really wasn't. There was a handful of it. Some of what I cut up was big enough to do some bowls and things like that out of it. But one of the things, if you do craft shows or sell your work, a lot of people like trees. So I had been doing a bunch of the trees. It's not quite well sanded down there. So we'll cut it back down. Last time I turned the cedar, that's what they were, was trees. I didn't have the dust collector on. It was really not really dusty at all. But boy, did it ever want to give me a headache in a hurry. So evidently that maybe I'm developing a little bit of an allergy to it or something, which is unfortunate because I have more of it to do. Next time around, we'll just use the dust collector. As you can see, that hose, and that hose right there, that's a lot of the times what I would do with stuff that, just like this stuff is dusty, and I'm sure it's not exactly good for it. And the hard part will be taking my time to get rid of that. It doesn't do a whole lot of good to bring the dust collection hose over and not turn the dust collector back on. Well, I was getting dusted out. I don't know. The only problem with step centers don't have quite the drive you do. Also, doesn't help to be a little extra aggressive with it. I don't remember having anything that ever stabilized being rather chippy. Oh, of course, that down in there still has epoxy in it, if I remember right. Yeah, there was wormholes. I was wondering why it sort of lunged. So that's going to be our base. Everything else is pretty much sanded, so yeah, I've already spent what, almost an hour on, about an hour on this. Always nice to ruin something at the last minute. Most likely, since it's been stabilized, we could stop and take a look. Normally don't take things off the bottom, take the bottom off of anything with just a parting tool, but since it is stabilized, it's actually cutting it clean. Imagine that. Last cut's a nice little fine cut. I'm going to hit a little bit of 400 on that corner. Sort of left a tiny little bit of a ridge right there. Not necessarily kind of placed just to hit it with 400, but seems like it got it. Fogged the sandpaper right up. Certainly not going to take it down to nothing in there. It's not in my best interest, especially since I don't know necessarily. There's some of them wormholes are going through there, so that would not would be a good thing. Yeah, we'll see here in a couple minutes. At least get a coat of. My process for the lacquer is always going to be a coat of shellac, and then we'll go from there with the lacquer. I'm just going to I'll just cut this off and we'll sand that last a little bit. It's quite heavy. because it is solid. Okay, you dumb little round piece. There you go. Always go back after those little round pieces they drop on the floor. Number one, they don't feel very nice when you step on them. I'll get some things out of the road. Bring our little disc sander on there. Which will probably very politely probably clog up a piece of stamp paper or two. Actually, that sucker is heavy. Huh, quite heavy. I have a Dremel. I'm kind of out of your sight of line of sight, but I'll just use a Dremel to take that off. Some of it off, a lot of it off first. Lives with that one little bit in it. It's one of them things that probably never come back out of there. Thing's been in there forever. Really, it's amazing how heavy it is, though. It's quite surprising. That's easy enough. Problem solved. That drill chuck. If you wanted that, if you didn't want that drill chuck to come out, it would. When you hopefully it just grab a hold of it and give it a twist and come out, it never will. So, in order to put some shellac on there, I could probably, I could just put it actually between two live centers. Take the cone off of this one. I don't want to poke another hole in it. Why did that switch back over? This was supposed to be on vertical, not horizontal. So we go use our cone to be our little friend. Bring that this live center back up. A little bit of pressure. Now we can sort of wipe it off. Probably can wipe it off with some alcohol to go with it. And then we'll put a coat of shellac on. Shellac's gonna, well, even the alcohol is gonna show us what it's gonna look like. I guess it's not gonna spin very well for me either. So that should be the color it ends up being. Should be. Try and get all the dirt and debris out of them little holes in there. That should work. Into some shellac. I use a piece of polyester material for a applicator pad, I guess you'd want to call it, especially for the shellac. Doesn't leave any dust or anything left behind. Try and get a nice even coat on it. Get those little places, it's something there. It's got some, definitely has some visual interest to it, I think. A little bit of, a couple of dried flowers on it, in it. Wonders of shellac is it dries so nice and quickly. I pretty much won't do anything else with it though tonight, except maybe go over some of these areas that seem to have soaked it in. I'll let it sit overnight, totally cure until tomorrow. A little bit of either Scotch-Brite pad or usually about 800 grit sandpaper. Go over it, make sure it's nice and smooth and flat. And then from there, then I'll spray the lacquer on it, which will be a water-based lacquer. That's what I use, what I've used for years. So, also when you start it with the shellac like that, a lot of times with the stuff, any of the stuff recently, especially something like this, probably only 2 coats, 3 at tops of lacquer or top of it. Now if I get the shellac super smooth, then I generally don't have to go back and, you know, most people sand in between. And if you get the first coat right, then, you know, some whatever you want, and unless you have a run or something like that, you might have to go back after it, but I try and avoid that. It's a little tacky yet, but here's what the little guy's going to look like. It's now probably only about 5 inches tall. Yep. A couple little dried flowers in there. Lots of things going on with it. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I know it was stabilized, or else some bug holes would have been powdery and they weren't. It's also what makes it heavy. If you've never messed with any stabilized wood, especially of any size, it just about doubles or triples whatever that piece of wood was when you started. So where are we at? It's just 120. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is, what it was. I have other ones to go with it too. I think, yeah, I have another one. This is actually is purple. I think it's the same garbage wood. Maybe since we got all the plastic all over the floor. This generally, whenever I do the stuff with the plastic like that, that normally doesn't go to my guy that takes all the wood chips. I said, you don't need plastic in with your animals. Of course, his opinion was he didn't really care, but I think there's no point in that. Stuff is almost difficult to get a good point in it even. This one has lots of epoxy on the ends. These go into a rectangular, squarish mold. Homemade mold, of course. Maybe I should do the other one off four corners here. Try and get as close to center and less this stuff I gotta deal with. Let's try the other one. That one worked a little better. I did one X on there, so that's that side. Go the other way. That's not bad. Okay, live with it. We'll see what tools you want to dull quickly again. Pretty sure it's the same material underneath. I think this was the older gentleman at the turning club that brings us quite a bit of wood. He's like, yeah, I got you a nice cherry burl, and I brought it home. I'm going to cut it up. And I'm like, I'd hate to see his idea of something that was bad, because it was all full of wormholes and bug holes and all that stuff. I'm like, this is what I call a great piece of wood, but it's also why it's still sitting around. To do the epoxy routine on it. I do have some deep pour epoxy. I think I do have another piece similar to these. I need to try it with the deep pour and see what it does differently. See, at least this one is better balanced than the others. Otherwise, very abusive on a cutting edge tool, and it and that is a Thompson tool. That takes a lot to knock. That's epoxy. Chippy, chippy whippy. I think the other one, it took me all three tools to get down to round. I'm going to assume this one's probably going to do the same, but I don't think I actually have three that are totally sharp. We'll see. Let's see if that's even getting remotely close. Remotely. Kind of the way I'd rather do it is take it down, get somewhere near that round area. That side of the gouge is gone. I don't think that sharp side is much sharper. We're going to find out though. Yeah, it's got a little left on it. Practice my left-handed turning. As you can see, it's not. Certain things you can do left-handed fairly well. It's another one of them things where you don't practice, you don't get very good at it. And that one's done. That may already be done. A little bit of sunwear with it, and yeah. Nope, nope, not yet. That's generally when you know when it gets to be round. This has a lot of wood in it, so I will not get, at least the other piece I did not get the big hairy ribbons that would normally come off of something that's total resin. Total resin is going to get the lovely ribbons that go straight up in the air and come straight back down. This one will not be that case. There is plenty of wood in there, at least for some parts of it. I mean, you're getting some ribbon, some, I don't know, they're really not really much ribbon. So a little bit under square yet. See, this has a lot of wood in it. I think maybe the only part of it actually has resin is going to be up there. Huh. Surprising, there's a crack that didn't fill in. Alright. Off to sharpen again. That wrong one. Not that one. We should be able to get it around and be able to do a little bit of something with it, hopefully. Oh, guess I should have left my face shield off. I don't know why I can never remember that. The camera's sitting in the right place if I lean that tiny little bit forward. My apologies. The camera down to a lot more of the wood, so dust collection needs to come up. A whole lot of. I wonder if they'll let me do this easier. Rather than cutting straight into it. It'll probably just dull the tool quicker, yeah, which is what it did. There's your ribbon valve. Right there, pure resin. I was able to get them to go the right direction and not catch anything. Always a plus if you can shoot them in some other direction than straight up. Well, there might be more resin in there than what I think there is. Goes around, except for a couple little spots up here, which needs to. I'm going to say that's going to be the top. There's the ribbons you wanted to see. Not the ones I want to see, but the ones everybody else likes to see. I know what they do. Get our dust collector in the right place. Oh, they're still breaking right there. Must not be totally round area. But they normally want to be one solid stream. Well, if it's going to cooperate like that, I might as well cut it with a gouge rather than the scraper. Use the scraper to clean it up. Usually that's Just like Al said, stuff usually has a straight stream to it. Probably will now that I use the gouge. Also very chippy. And sticks fast and everything. And don't be jumping at it. Stop, take a look. Yeah, it's going to be pure resin up on the top. Okay, I guess. It'll work. That's the other places, then you just keep taking it down. Under. We're on this part down here. Teeny tiny little curls. So I'll work my shape down a little bit. I haven't just quite figured out how I'm putting it. I'll do the tenon differently this time. Try to try to utilize it. This is shorter. This is only about 5 inches long to start with. So let's just go with the guess routine of, say, somewhere in that area. I think it's going to be my high point. That's just kind of a guess. Definitely, I'm not getting a very smooth curve. That's likely because it already knocked the edge off of that. $2 in one shot. They're gonna be like the other one, a little short and fat. So that's work fine. Hard part right there is trying to get it to go where you want it to fairly quickly. And you see, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, the wood can be scraped. It's going to be a whole sort of different animal than the resin. Also leaving some spirals in it by cutting it that way, but be okay. It almost look like a little old-timey milk bottle if I leave it like that and make this round. Yeah, might be an interesting look. Just sort of smooth this up a bit. Certainly picking up some vibration on that. It shouldn't be. It's probably telling me the scraper's getting dull. That we can solve that problem a little easier than the rest. Little diamond hone. Got 2 passes on either side. Puts it back to a nice sharp edge, which is what this resin likes. If that helped it. That helped it a bit. Not a lot of bit, but a little bit. I think we'll go ahead and round this bottom end down here before we even bother making a tendon on it. There's your view. There's your one-piece strings. There's a section right there that's, I'm surprised it didn't do it up there. Not sure why it didn't do it up there. It should have. That is pure resin right there. So, if you want to be pure resin, then we'll just scrape you. And hopefully the stream will go straight up in the air. Yeah, right like that. Straight up in the air, straight into the dust collector. That's the stream you were talking about, Al. That's the one that's a pain in the ass. It's also why that cyclone separator got empty before I did this tonight. I goes right directly into that. It was easy enough to clean out. Yeah, like I say, I don't do it very often. That's a pain. Is truly a pain, especially on something this big. I do some handles for like bottle openers and things like that, and they're not too bad. Smaller dust collection right there. You get up into something a little bigger like this, a lot more of a pain in the bazooka. Guess I really should think about where do you need a tenon down here to grab a hold of this so I can drill it and finish up the top. Almost right there now, so that should work for that. There is ways of getting them to go away. You can use a toothbrush or rubber or plastic brush or whatever and get them to break while the machine's running. That does work somewhat. The ones I don't like is the ones that actually are getting behind that bearing right there. So that should be our tenon. Let's stop and check and make sure. I don't really want it any. That should work. So if we only lose a quarter of an inch on this one, that's all the better yet. So bring that down in a little bit deeper. I think it's almost much harder to make a nice shape with just a scraper, which would be same as some of the people that would feel they need to use carbide tools. I'm just probably more the fact that I just don't do it very much. Still controlling it with my body though. If I do it that way, then I do get a nice curve, which is the generally the problem that you would have, or I would have, anyhow, put it that way. So, okay, that works somewhat. Still tons of resin, so I guess we'll just keep on scraping away. Worst thing is it all gets stuck fast to that tool rest, and then the tool doesn't want to slide on it. That's my biggest complaint about this stuff. So if the tool doesn't slide easy enough, then you're much harder pressed to be able to make a sort of nice pleasing kind of a curve when the tool doesn't cooperate and go along that curvy plane. I'm probably taking a bit of a chance doing it this way versus what I did on the last one. I do have a tendency to grab it in a chuck. I'm pretty much gonna we're pretty much finish this up, and then we'll deal with the top, which is not necessarily the way you should do that, I'm sure. I won't have quite the support out there. This is a sort of a short piece. I think I can get away with it. Definitely a much longer neck on this one than what it was on the other one. Definitely wants to give me some ripply chatter marks, see whether I have too much pressure on it, which is probably the case. Between centers and you put too much pressure trying to bow. You just have to go slow and steady. Listen to it vibrate. There is marks there. It's leaving ripples. Maybe we'll be able to get some of them out once we're in the chuck, but maybe not. I definitely don't make two of the same, for sure. It's gonna have much bigger rim up here. It's smaller than the biggest diameter, so that's probably okay. I think I'll just keep working it down a little bit. Uh, a worm track that's not really overly appealing, but still hear that little worm track in there. I shouldn't touch that either. It's a good thing to find out. I'm not getting rid of that. That's an eighth of an inch deep. Definitely don't have too much pressure on it. So, I think I might just leave that the way it is right there. I'll grab my skew and get rid of, got some pretty nice, not so nice I should say, ripples in here. Get rid of a couple of them. I think that's that. I think it's 8 o'clock. It's time to quit. Boring, dusty, dirty stuff. The rest of it's pretty much sanding anyhow. Tiny bit of cutting up there yet. But I think what I will do with that tomorrow or another day, I will sand this complete the whole way from here to here, and then I'll grab it in the chuck and I'll drill a hole, hollow this out. This one will be just like the other one. It's probably pretty heavy. I would assume it's pretty heavy, put it that way. In weight wise, oh yeah, yeah, they're very dense because of that has been stabilized. I would be very, very creative to actually try and hollow something like that. Yeah, we'll see. Otherwise, that's pretty much going to be a wrap for tonight. Maybe back on some late afternoon this week. But other than that, that's going to be it. Oh man, got to go blow my nose. Or you should have a powered respirator or something educated like that to do this kind of thing. But till next time, everybody has themselves a wonderful week. And why? Thought this was supposed to be streaming in vertical rather than horizontal. Oh, can never get anything right. Jump over to that one once. Oh no, that's in horizontal. Huh. Interesting. Okay. Well, everybody have themselves a good week. If I don't see you some other time this week, stay safe in your shops, of course, and we'll see you next time.